The sound of glass shattering was the first thing Owen Foster remembered that night. Not the boardroom applause, not the billion-dollar valuation, not the champagne that rained down on his tailored navy suit. Just the sharp, lonely sound of breaking glass, echoing against the windows of his Manhattan penthouse. "Congratulations, Mr. Foster," someone had said hours earlier, shaking his hand. "You've built an empire." But now, standing alone at nearly midnight, tie loose eyes hollow, he whispered to the empty room and lost everything else. He didn't plan to remember her. He had trained himself not to. For years he had filed every emotion under unproductive. Maya Simmons was supposed to be part of that purge, another memory archived and deleted. But some ghosts, he was learning, refused to stay buried. Owen Foster was the face of modern ambition, a white American billionaire founder of Foster Tech, the youngest CEO to ever ring the NASDAQ bell. His words could move markets. His signature could build cities. At 42, he was the man magazines called the blueprint of power. Yet, beneath the Italian suit and polished armor, he hadn't slept through a night in 6 years. Maya had once called him the restless kind. Back then, in their tiny Brooklyn apartment with the broken radiator and the humming fridge, she'd tease, "You'll chase the stars, Owen, but you'll forget you're human." He'd laugh and pull her closer, whispering promises about forever. Forever lasted 5 years. He could still see the note she'd left, 5 words written in her small, looping handwriting. "This time, I choose me." That was the night he learned that silence could be louder than screaming. He didn't call, didn't run after her. He told his lawyers to handle it, told himself she'd slow him down, that love was a distraction for men without vision. It worked until it didn't. Now, as Manhattan's skyline blinked in the distance like a pulse, Owen poured another drink and stared at his reflection in the glass. He looked like success, incarnate sharp jawline silver at his temples. The kind of man who appeared unbreakable in every Forbes photo. But under the light, he looked haunted. He didn't believe in therapy, didn't believe in regret. He believed in output leverage control. And yet, that night, when his phone lit up with an email about a new company daycare his firm had sponsored in Harlem, something unexplainable stirred inside him. He almost ignored it. Another PR move, another tax credit. But the word daycare lingered like a whisper. He closed his laptop, but the thought refused to fade. Children. He hadn't thought of children since Maya. He'd told himself he didn't want any, that the world was too messy, that love was a risk he couldn't quantify. But the lie had begun to crack. Maybe it started that spring at the charity gala in Geneva, when he saw a little girl laughing near the dessert table, tiny curls bouncing cheeks, glowing under chandelier light. For a brief, unguarded second, Owen froze. The child's laughter, bright, unfiltered, struck something deep in his chest, something that sounded like memory. He remembered a promise he never kept. "You'd make a good father someday," Maya had whispered once, half asleep on his shoulder. He had kissed her hair and murmured, "someday," before opening his laptop again. Now that word felt like a curse. He tried to shake it off, returned to his emails, to the mergers and contracts that built his empire. But when dawn bled into the city, Owen found himself standing at his floor-to-ceiling window, watching the world wake without him. He didn't know why his chest hurt, or why, for the first time in years, he wanted to drive uptown. The next morning, his assistant entered the office with a schedule as tight as armor. "Sir, your meeting with Tokyo's investors." "Cancel it," he said quietly. She blinked. "Excuse me." "Cancel Tokyo. Get the car. We're going to Harlem." He didn't explain, didn't need to. Some part of him, the part he thought was dead, had already decided. Traffic was a crawl through Upper Manhattan, but he didn't mind. Each red light, each block tightened something in his throat. The driver glanced back once. "You okay, Mr. Foster?" "Keep driving." The SUV stopped in front of a small brick building, wedged between a laundromat and a grocery store. The sign above the door read, "Little Steps Daycare, sponsored by Foster Tech." He almost turned back. It was absurd, a billionaire CEO standing outside a daycare like a lost man. But then, through the wide glass window, he saw them. Two little girls sitting at a red plastic table. Twins, one with tight curls tied in red ribbons, the other with looser hair, framing her round face. They were painting, one chaotic and colorful, the other careful, deliberate. Owen's lungs forgot how to work. Something in their faces, the tilt of their heads, the focus in their eyes, hit him like a punch. He stepped closer, one hand braced against the cold glass. His reflection blurred into theirs. "Sir," his driver called softly. Owen didn't answer. He couldn't. The smaller girl looked up suddenly, and for a split second, their eyes met. Hazel brown, warm, intelligent, familiar. The kind of eyes that had once looked at him, across a cluttered kitchen table, laughing over burnt pancakes and broken dreams. The world tilted. Before he could process it, the daycare door opened, and she stepped out. Maya Simmons. Same soft brown skin, same steady posture, but her presence had changed. She carried herself like a woman who had fought to survive, and won. Her hair was pulled back into a neat bun, her hands holding a clipboard, her sweater flecked with paint stains. She looked both ordinary and extraordinary, like grace, forged from grit. For a long second, neither spoke. The street noise dimmed. "Owen." Her voice was calm, unreadable, dangerously gentle. He swallowed hard. "Maya, what are you doing here?" He tried to find his usual composure, the tone that silenced boardrooms. But all that came out was truth. "I don't know." Her gaze didn't waver. Behind her through the glass, the girls were still painting, one of them, laughing, the other biting her lip in concentration, exactly the way Maya used to when she worked on her sketches years ago. He took a slow breath. "They look like me." Her eyes flickered, not surprise, not denial, just quiet certainty. "They should." The air thickened, charged. "Maya," his voice cracked. "Are they?" She folded her arms steady. "You tell me." And just like that, Owen Foster, the man who conquered markets and buried his past, felt his empire crumble not from scandal or failure, but from two pairs of eyes that mirrored his own. He realized then that all the power in the world couldn't save him from the truth standing right in front of him. The past hadn't come to haunt him. It had come to collect. He looked at Maya, really looked, and for the first time in 6 years he whispered, "I'm sorry." She didn't flinch. Then prove it. Her words cut deeper than any loss he'd ever known. As she walked back inside, sunlight spilled across the window, and for the first time since she'd left Owen, understood what it meant to be powerless. He turned away slowly, heart pounding, a man at the edge of redemption. If you've ever wondered what happens when the one you lost becomes the mirror of who you are now, stay with me. Because sometimes the past doesn't end. It waits. And this is where their story truly begins. Rain began to fall that afternoon, soft and uninvited, like the kind that carried memories in every drop. Owen sat in his car outside the daycare, watching the thin lines of water blur the window. Inside, children's laughter echoed faintly through the glass, a sound that once meant peace to him, now a storm. He had built skyscrapers, rewritten markets, and rewritten himself to forget. But he'd never prepared for the kind of storm that came with two little girls who looked like him, or the woman who once knew his every silence. He stayed until the last parent left. He didn't know why. He just needed one more glimpse of her, one more thread to pull from a past that refused to stay buried. When the door finally opened, Maya stepped out, umbrella in hand. Her hair was damp around her temples, her steps unhurried. She didn't look surprised to see him waiting. "I didn't think billionaires waited in the rain," she said softly, walking toward him. "I didn't think you'd still be here," he replied, voice low. Her lips curved not into a smile, but something in between, half irony, half ache. "Some of us don't have the luxury of leaving." Owen swallowed hard, his gaze lowering to the small bag slung over her shoulder. Paintbrushes, tiny notebooks, crayons. Signs of a life lived far away from penthouses and boardrooms. He hesitated, then opened the passenger door. "Let me give you a ride." Maya shook her head. "I'm fine, Owen. You're soaked, and you're still trying to fix things with convenience." Her words landed like a truth he didn't want to face. But before he could speak, she sighed, tired, but kind. "It's just 2 blocks. If you want to talk, walk." He stepped out of the car without protest. The rain caught him full on cold, cleansing, almost merciful. They walked in silence, their footsteps splashing in shallow puddles. Streetlights flickered on, one by one, washing the pavement in gold. "Why didn't you tell me?" he finally asked, voice quiet, careful. Maya didn't look at him. "Tell you what? You know what." She stopped walking. "You didn't want to know, Owen. That's not true." "It is." She turned, eyes sharp now, not cruel, just painfully honest. "I tried. I emailed. I called. I even sent letters to your office. You changed your number. You changed your address. You built walls so high no one could climb them, not even me." He stared at her, raindrops sliding down his face. "I was busy, ambitious, important," she finished for him. "Yes, I remember." For a moment, neither spoke. The rain softened, and the city hummed around them. Cars' footsteps, the faint echo of jazz from a nearby cafe. Maya broke the silence first. "When I realized I was pregnant, I didn't know what to do. I sat on our old couch and cried until I couldn't breathe. Then I got up and started working, because that's what you taught me. Survive." He flinched at that word. "Survive. I wanted to tell you." She continued, her voice trembling slightly now. "But by the time I found the courage, your assistant said you were overseas. She told me, and I quote, 'Mr. Foster doesn't handle personal matters anymore.'" Owen felt the ground tilt beneath him. "I didn't know." "No, you didn't want to know." Her tone softened. "But I don't hate you for it. You chose the life you wanted. I just couldn't let my daughters grow up thinking love meant waiting for someone who never came home." He breathed deeply, rain and regret mixing in the air. "They're mine, aren't they?" Her eyes met his. "You tell me, Owen." He exhaled shakily. "They look like you." Maya's lips parted, the faintest trace of warmth flickering there. "Nice try." He smiled weakly, a rare broken thing, then said, "I'd like to see them, to know them." Maya hesitated. "They don't know about you. Not yet." "Then let me change that. You don't get to walk in and rewrite the story because you're ready now." He nodded. "Then tell me what I have to do." Her gaze softened. "Start with listening." They stood there a while longer, two souls drenched, but finally honest. When she turned to go, he followed. Her building was small, old brick, with ivy climbing up the side. She stopped at the entrance, hands clutching the strap of her bag. They sleep early, she said. Maybe you can come tomorrow, around 4. His breath caught. I'll be there. She nodded, then slipped inside. Owen stood in the rain long after the door closed, staring at the dim window above. Behind that light was everything he'd once thrown away, and everything he still wanted to believe he could earn back. The next day, he arrived early. He parked across the street, heart racing like a man heading into battle. He had given presentations to governments negotiated billion-dollar deals. None of that had ever scared him. But the thought of meeting 2 little girls did. When Maya opened the door, he almost forgot to breathe. She wore a loose blue dress, her hair pulled back, no makeup, just ease. Behind her, laughter spilled from the living room, a sound both foreign and familiar. Come in, she said simply. The apartment was small, filled with color crayon drawings, taped to the wall storybooks, stacked by the couch, the scent of vanilla and paint lingering in the air. 2 girls sat on the floor, surrounded by paper and glitter. One looked up first, curious. Mommy, who's that? Maya paused, eyes flickering toward him. This is an old friend. The girl with the red ribbons tilted her head. He looks like Ava when she's serious. Owen smiled, voice soft. And who's Ava? I am, she said proudly, chest puffed out. And that's Aria. Aria waved shyly, her curls bouncing. Hi, hi. Owen whispered back, his heart tightening painfully. For the next hour, he sat on the rug with them, pretending to know what he was doing. He listened as they explained the rules of their coloring game. No staying inside the lines, that's boring, and he followed every instruction like it was sacred law. When Aria's crayon broke, he reached instinctively to fix it, his fingers brushing hers. She looked up and smiled, and something deep in him unraveled. Across the room, Maya watched quietly, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. The scene was so ordinary, it hurt. For a second, she let herself imagine this was just another Sunday, that time hadn't stolen 6 years from them. Then she blinked the thought away. When the girls finally went to bed, Owen lingered by the door. They're incredible, he said. They're everything, Maya replied. He hesitated. I want to help. With them. With you. Her voice was gentle but steady. They don't need money, Owen. They need presence. And I need to know you won't disappear when this gets inconvenient. He met her eyes. I won't. She nodded once, then opened the door for him. We'll see. Outside, the night air felt lighter. For the first time in years, Owen didn't head back to his penthouse. He drove without direction past bridges and rivers, and places that used to mean nothing to him. Now, everything did. Weeks passed. He kept showing up to pick them up from school, to drop off paint sets, to read bedtime stories, when Maya had late work. The girls began calling him Mr. Owen, then Uncle O. Maya pretended not to notice the shift, but she saw how they lit up around him, how he'd kneel down to tie their shoelaces, how his laughter sounded softer these days. Still, she kept her guard. One evening, as he helped wash dishes, she said quietly, Why now, Owen? Why come back? He set the towel down, thoughtful. Because for the first time in my life, I want something I can't buy. I want a second chance. Her eyes searched his face. And if I say no, then I'll still keep showing up, not for you, but for them. The words landed like a promise. Months later, the girls invited him to their school play. He sat in the middle row, heart hammering, as they walked on stage in paper crowns and angel wings. When Aria spotted him in the crowd, she waved so hard, her halo slipped. The audience laughed. Owen laughed too, but behind the laughter, his eyes stung. Afterward, Maya found him outside his suit flecked with glitter. "They love you," she said softly. "I love them," he whispered. Her breath caught. And he met her gaze steady, unguarded, always. For a moment, time stilled. Rain began to fall again, gentle and forgiving. And when she didn't turn away, he reached for her hand. She didn't pull back. The city around them pulsed with light, car horns, laughter, chaos. But between them there was peace. Love didn't roar back into their lives. It returned quietly like dawn after a long winter. Not perfect, not simple, but real. Sometimes healing doesn't come with grand gestures. It comes with small ones, reading bedtime stories, showing up, staying even when it rains. And sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about falling again, but about never walking away this time. The snow began falling before sunset, slow and silent, turning the city into a blur of white and gold. Owen stood outside Maya's building, holding a paper bag that smelled faintly of cinnamon and vanilla. Inside were the girls' favorite pastries from the bakery on the corner, the ones with the messy frosting they loved to lick off first. He hesitated before knocking. Not because he doubted his welcome, he had been part of their lives for nearly a year now, but because every visit reminded him of the line he still hadn't crossed. The line between forgiveness and love. When the door opened, laughter burst out like light. Ava ran straight into his arms, her hair full of glitter. Aria followed, holding a paint-stained ornament. "Uncle O, look. We made snow angels on paper." He laughed, lowering himself to their height. "That's beautiful. But next time we're doing the real ones outside." Maya appeared behind them, her smile small but genuine. She was wearing a soft gray sweater, sleeves rolled to her elbows. The apartment smelled like cookies and pine. There was a tree in the corner, imperfect, uneven, yet glowing. "You came early," she said. "I couldn't help it. The city looks different tonight." She raised an eyebrow. "You mean quiet?" He nodded. "I guess that's rare for New York. It's the kind of night that asks you to listen," she murmured, then turned to the girls. "Wash your hands before dinner." They scurried off, leaving the two of them standing in the warm, gentle space of everything they never said. Owen placed the paper bag on the counter. "I brought pastries." "Of course you did." She smiled faintly. "You always try to fix things with sweets. Can you blame me? It's working so far." Her laugh was soft, cautious, the kind that only half believed in ease. Dinner was simple. Laughter between bites. The girls told stories about school, about snowball fights, about who liked who, about the funny teacher who couldn't spell dinosaur. And when they weren't looking, Owen kept glancing at Maya. She moved through the evening like quiet music, not dramatic, not demanding, but steady. He wondered how he'd ever survived years without that sound. When the girls finally drifted to sleep, he helped her clean the kitchen. The silence that followed was gentle at first, then deepened into something unspoken. "Do you miss it?" she asked suddenly without turning around. "Miss what?" "Your old life, the noise, the spotlight." He leaned against the counter thinking. "Sometimes I miss the illusion of control. The idea that if I worked hard enough, I could outrun every mistake. And now," he met her eyes. "Now I know some mistakes are meant to be faced, not escaped." She dried her hands slowly. "I used to hate you," she said quietly. He didn't flinch. "I know. I don't anymore." That caught him. He looked at her carefully. "Then, what do you feel?" She hesitated. "Something in between." He smiled faintly. "I can work with that." She shook her head, but her lips curved. "You don't need to fix everything, Owen. Maybe not. but I'd like to try fixing this. She exhaled, not quite a sigh, not quite a refusal. You can't fix what broke us with promises. You can only build something new. I'd rather build with you than anyone else. She looked away, eyes shimmering under the kitchen light. Don't say that if you don't mean it. I've never meant anything more. The air shifted heavy with something old and fragile. When she spoke again, her voice was low. The night I left you, I thought I'd never stop shaking. I packed that note 100 times before I walked out. I waited for you to come after me, even for a few minutes. You didn't. He swallowed hard. I was too proud, too stupid. You were scared, she corrected softly. You thought love made you weak. He took a step closer. And now I know it's the only thing that ever made me human. She turned then, finally facing him. The distance between them felt electric, dangerous, inevitable. You can't erase what happened, she whispered. I don't want to erase it, he said. I just want to write what comes next. Her lips parted, not to argue, not to run, but to breathe. And in that breath, something shifted between them. He reached for her hand, slow, deliberate. She didn't pull away. It was the simplest touch, but it carried years of unspoken things. Apologies, memories, what-ifs. Outside, the snow thickened. The world turned quieter, smaller, as if it was holding its breath with them. The next morning, he stayed to make breakfast. The girls squealed at his attempt to flip pancakes and nearly burned one. Maya watched from the doorway, arms crossed, amusement softening her face. I see you've mastered chaos, she teased. I'm learning from the experts, he said, nodding toward the twins. Uncle O burns everything, Arya declared. That's his secret ingredient. Ava giggled. The room filled with laughter, the kind that melted whatever coldness still lingered. For the first time in years, Owen felt something close to home. After breakfast, while the girls built pillow forts, Maya stood by the window watching the snow fall heavier, now blanketing the city in white. Do you ever wonder, she said softly, what would have happened if we hadn't broken? He joined her gaze, tracing the skyline. Maybe we would have grown tired of each other. Maybe we'd still be in that apartment fighting about time zones and deadlines. Or maybe we'd have learned this lesson earlier, she said. Maybe he agreed. But if it took losing you to become the man you deserved, then I can live with that. Her breath hitched, barely audible. You talk like a man who's forgiven himself. Not yet, he admitted, but I'm getting closer. She turned to him, her expression unreadable. You're not the same man I left. I hope not, he said quietly. They stood there in silence again, watching the city disappear under snow. It felt like the world had given them a pause, a fragile window where nothing existed but this quiet, this warmth, this chance. That night, as he helped tuck the girls in, Arya looked up at him and whispered, Mommy smiles more when you're here. Owen froze. She does. Ava nodded sleepily. She even sings now. She used to just hum. He brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, voice trembling. Then I'll make sure she keeps singing. When he stepped out, Maya was waiting by the hallway, arms folded, eyes soft. They like you too much, she murmured. I like them too much, he replied. That's dangerous. He smiled. So is breathing sometimes. Her lips curved, but she said nothing. He hesitated before leaving. I don't want to rush you, he said finally. I just want to be here however you'll let me. You already are, she whispered, and for the first time that felt like enough. Weeks turned into months again, and something new bloomed quietly between them. Not the reckless love they once knew, but something steadier, deeper. It showed in small things: how she started texting him first, how he stopped checking his phone during dinner, how laughter filled the spaces where silence once lived. They never called it love, but they both felt it like spring thawing through old ice. Then one evening, as the girls painted at the table, Arya asked suddenly, "Mommy, is Uncle O our dad?" The brush slipped from Maya's hand. Time stopped. Owen froze, breath caught in his chest. He waited, not daring to speak. Maya's voice was calm when it came. "Why do you ask that, sweetheart?" "Because Ava said dads are the ones who always come back," Arya said simply. Silence filled the room. Then Maya turned, eyes meeting his questioning, trembling brave. He took a slow breath. "Would it be okay if I answered?" That Maya hesitated, then nodded. He knelt down beside the girls, his voice gentle. "I wasn't there when you were born. I should have been. But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Ava studied him. "So, you are?" He smiled faintly. "If you'll have me." They looked at each other, then nodded in perfect unison. "Okay," they said. Maya blinked fast, turning away, pretending to clean the brushes. But her hands trembled. Owen stood behind her, quiet. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For letting me be part of their world, of yours." She didn't answer. She just leaned back slightly, barely, but enough for his shoulder to brush hers. Outside, the city lights shimmered through falling snow, reflecting off the glass like stars returning home. Love doesn't always announce its return. Sometimes it creeps in through ordinary evenings, through laughter, through forgiveness, through the quiet courage of staying. Owen once thought love was about control, about perfection. Now he knew it was about presence, the choice to show up again and again, even after the world had broken you apart. And as he stood there, surrounded by warmth, by laughter, by the woman who once walked away but never really left his heart, he finally understood. Redemption doesn't come from erasing the past. It comes from loving, despite it. The first signs of spring arrived quietly, without permission, the way good things often do after a long winter. The snow melted from the fire escapes, the sidewalks glistened under the morning sun, and the scent of rain clung to the air like a promise of something softer. Owen found himself waking earlier these days, not to read financial reports or review contracts, but to pack school lunches the way Arya liked extra strawberries, and Ava hated when the sandwiches touched. He was clumsy at first. He used to hold meetings with precision and timing, but nothing prepared him for the chaos of twin giggles and spilled milk before 8 a.m. Yet every morning when Maya emerged from the bedroom half asleep, hair tousled, her eyes softened at the sight of him there. Sleeves rolled, smile, uncertain, it felt like something inside him finally made sense. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real. And for a man who once built his life on control, that was its own kind of miracle. One morning, as he buttoned Ava's coat, she looked up and asked Uncle O, "Are you going to come to the park with us, after school?" He smiled. "If your mom says yes." From the kitchen, Maya's voice floated out, amused. "If your work says yes." He walked over to where she stood pouring coffee. "My work doesn't decide my days anymore," he said softly. She looked up, skeptical but smiling. "You've said that before. And this time, I mean it." She sipped her coffee, eyes meeting his. "We'll see." Later that afternoon, he did show up. The park was alive with color, children chasing bubbles, kites twisting in the sky, laughter blending with the city's heartbeat. Arya and Ava ran ahead, chasing each other through patches of sunlight. Maya sat on the bench beside him, her expression calm, but her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her jacket. "They love having you here," she said after a while. He glanced at her. "And you?" Her lips curved. "Still deciding." He chuckled, but there was something deeper beneath the humor. A longing. a fragile question neither dared to ask aloud. After a moment, he said quietly, "You used to draw here." She turned to him, surprised. "You remember that?" "Of course. You'd sit right there near the fountain. You said the sound of water made you feel like the world was starting over." Her gaze softened. "That was a lifetime ago. Maybe. Or maybe it was the beginning of this one." She looked away, but he caught the faintest smile before she did. As the sun dipped lower, the girls begged for one last round of the merry-go-round. Owen pushed them gently, laughter mixing with their delighted squeals. Maya stood nearby, watching, her heart caught somewhere between then and now. She had built her life around safety, around predictability, quiet mornings and soft good nights. But seeing him like this, sleeves rolled, wind in his hair, the same man who once believed emotions were weaknesses, it stirred something she'd tried for years to silence. When the ride slowed, Arya shouted, "Faster, Daddy!" The world stilled. Owen froze, his hands still on the handle. Maya's breath caught. He turned toward her eyes, uncertain, searching. But Maya didn't move, didn't correct the word. She just looked at him, something fragile flickering behind her calm expression. Arya giggled, unaware of the storm she'd stirred. "You push. The best." Owen smiled weakly, voice low. "Thanks, kiddo." When they finally left the park, the air between him and Maya was full of silence, not heavy, but alive with things unsaid. That evening, he stayed for dinner again. The girls fell asleep early, exhausted from laughter and sunlight. Maya stood by the sink, drying dishes, when Owen spoke. "Did you hear her?" he asked softly. "I did." He hesitated. "Does it bother you?" She placed a plate down carefully. "No, it wasn't planned. But maybe it's time they knew it's okay to call someone Dad, if that's what he feels like." He stared at her, the ache in his chest deepening. "And what about you, Maya? What do I feel like to you?" Her breath caught. "You feel like a risk I once took and almost didn't survive." He took a step closer. "Then let me be the proof that risk was worth it." She met his eyes, voice trembling. "You can't erase the years, Owen. You can't undo the nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering why I wasn't enough." "I'm not here to undo them," he said quietly. "I'm here to make sure you never have to wonder again." Silence. Then she looked down, shaking her head lightly. "You make it sound easy. It's not. But it's honest." When she looked up, there was something in her eyes, a kind of surrender, not to him, but to the truth that maybe, just maybe, love had come back in a gentler form. She turned back to the sink, voice softer now. "If you're serious, prove it." "How stay?" The word hung in the air, simple, devastating. He stepped closer, barely an inch between them. "I already am." Weeks passed. The world kept turning, but their little orbit shifted. They began to move like a family again, not perfect, not defined, but whole in their own way. There were mornings of laughter, evenings of tired silence, and weekends filled with small adventures, painting, baking, arguing about bedtime. But there were also moments when Maya pulled away, quiet and distant, as if waiting for the past to remind her why she shouldn't trust him. Owen never pushed. He just kept showing up. One night, after putting the girls to bed, she found him sitting on the balcony, staring out at the skyline. "You used to hate stillness," she said softly. He turned, smiling faintly. "Now it feels like breathing." She stepped closer. "You've changed. Because of you." "That's not fair," she whispered. "You're making it hard for me not to fall again." He looked at her. really looked the way a man does when he's seeing someone for the first time twice. Then don't fight it. Her breath trembled. You hurt me once. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure I don't again. And then, without another word, he reached out slow, careful, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. The kiss wasn't urgent or desperate. It was quiet, honest, like two people learning how to breathe together again. When it ended, she leaned her forehead against his chest, whispering, I don't know if I can forgive everything. You don't have to, he said. Just love me anyway. Days blurred into weeks. Love returned like sunlight through old windows, slow, warm, unexpected. They began to move as one. Grocery lists, bedtime stories, laughter spilling across shared mornings. The city outside was still relentless, but inside those walls, time softened. One night, the girls asked if they could take a family photo for school. Maya hesitated. Owen smiled. Why not? The flash caught them mid-laughter. Arya's arms wrapped around his neck, Ava grinning wide. Maya's smile caught halfway between disbelief and joy. When the picture printed, Maya held it in her hands for a long moment. Then she placed it on the fridge. Owen noticed, but said nothing. He didn't need to. Some gestures didn't need words. Love, he learned, wasn't about perfection. It was about the quiet consistency of showing up for the hard days, the ordinary mornings, the second chances. And as the city outside bloomed with spring, Owen realized something profound. Forgiveness wasn't a moment. It was a practice, a choice made in every heartbeat that whispered, stay. He didn't need Maya to forget the past. He just needed her to believe in the future, one that started right there, in that tiny apartment that smelled of paint, pancakes, and hope. The rain returned after weeks of sunlight washing the city clean of its spring dust. It came down in steady sheets against Maya's window, the kind of rain that made everything slow down. Thoughts, heartbeats, even time. She stood in the kitchen watching droplets trace patterns on the glass, one hand resting on the counter, the other wrapped around a cooling mug of coffee. Behind her, the laughter of the girls drifted faintly from their room, the soft, innocent sound that always filled the space between her and silence. Yet tonight, the silence felt heavier, the kind that waited for truth to finally be spoken. Owen was late. He'd promised to come home early. He always did. And though she didn't want to admit it, the quiet ache that grew with each passing minute had nothing to do with his absence, and everything to do with the fear that history could still repeat itself. When the knock finally came, she didn't move at first. She just closed her eyes, steadying herself before opening the door. He stood there, hair-damp coat, dripping, eyes tired, in the way only guilt could carve. I'm sorry, he said immediately. The board meeting ran over, and I'm not angry. She interrupted softly, stepping aside to let him in. He hesitated, searching her face. You should be. I was, she admitted. Years ago. Now I just get quiet. Owen exhaled slowly, setting his keys down. The girls ran out before the tension could thicken, their tiny feet slapping against the floor. Daddy Arya threw herself into his arms, her laughter breaking the stillness like light through clouds. Ava followed, holding up a paper crown. We made a kingdom. You're the king. Owen knelt smiling despite the storm in his chest. A king. What about your mom? She's the queen, Ava said, matter-of-factly. He glanced up at Maya. Then I'd better not disappoint her. Her lips curved faintly. Try not to. Later, after the girls were asleep, he found her on the couch, blanket, over her lap, reading. The lamp cast a pool of warm light between them. He sat beside her carefully. You're quiet tonight. I'm thinking, she said without looking up. Dangerous? He teased gently. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Do you ever think about us every day? I mean, before all this, before the girls, before the noise. He leaned back, eyes tracing the ceiling. Sometimes, but mostly, I think about what I didn't say. Her gaze lifted. Like what? He turned to her, voice low. Like how I missed you even when you were still next to me. How I thought love was a distraction when it was the only thing that kept me human. How every time you walked out of a room, I felt something in me follow you. Maya's eyes softened. Then why didn't you say it? Because I thought I'd have time. She closed the book quietly. We always think that, don't we? That there'll be another day, another chance. Until there isn't. He nodded slowly. You deserved better. I wanted you, Owen. Not better. Just you. He reached for her hand, hesitant at first, then firm when she didn't pull away. Then let me be that now. Her thumb brushed against his knuckles, a small gesture that felt like mercy. You already are, she whispered, but her eyes told a more complicated story, one that still carried the shadows of the woman who'd once packed her bags, with shaking hands, and walked out into the night. Over the next few weeks, their rhythm shifted again. There was laughter, routine, small moments of peace, but also new kinds of distance, quieter and harder to name. Owen noticed it first. The way Maya would pause before answering him. The way she stared out the window, longer than usual, as if something beyond the glass was calling her. One night after dinner, he finally asked, "What's been on your mind?" She hesitated, then sighed. A school offered me a position in another city for the summer program. He froze. You're leaving? Not forever. Just a few months. With the girls? Of course. The room fell into silence. The air thickened with things neither wanted to say. Finally, he asked quietly, Did you plan to tell me I just did? He nodded, looking down at his hands. You didn't ask what I thought. Because this isn't about you, Owen. Not everything is. I know. But this us, it's not just about me anymore. Or you. It's them. It's all of us. Her voice softened. That's exactly why I'm going. They deserve to see that their mother can stand on her own too. He met her eyes, then a mix of pride and pain. And what about me? What do I deserve? Maya looked at him for a long time, to learn what it feels like to let someone go without losing them. The words sank deep. Owen didn't argue. He just nodded, the kind of nod that comes from a man learning to respect love's boundaries instead of trying to cage it. The weeks before her departure moved quietly. The girls talked excitedly about their summer adventure, unaware of the quiet ache between the adults who tucked them in each night. Owen came by every evening, helping pack boxes, fixing broken latches, pretending not to count the days left. On the final night, the apartment smelled of cardboard and coffee. Maya stood by the window, the city glowing behind her. He approached slowly. Do you need anything this time? She whispered. He wanted to say, I'll wait, but the words felt too heavy, too familiar. Instead, he simply said, I'll call every night. She smiled softly. You don't have to. I want to. She looked at him, then really looked, as if memorizing his face. You've become a good man, Owen, because of you. She shook her head. No, because you finally let yourself love. He stepped closer, their foreheads almost touching. Then don't make me forget how. Her breath trembled. You won't. When he kissed her, it wasn't desperate or pleading. It was slow, the kind of kiss that doesn't ask for promises, only presence. When they pulled apart, she whispered, We'll see each other again, Count on it. Count. Summer arrived like a thief, all light and distance. The city felt emptier, without her laughter echoing through the apartment, without the girl's drawings taped across the fridge. Owen buried himself in work, but it wasn't the same kind of work as before. It wasn't escape. It was waiting. He sent postcards every week, silly ones covered in doodles the girls loved. Maya wrote back brief notes in her looping script. They're growing fast. Aria misses your pancakes. Ava says she can beat you at chess now. But sometimes there were longer letters, ones that spoke not of updates, but of memories. Do you remember the night the power went out in Brooklyn? You lit candles in soda bottles, and we talked until sunrise. I think that was the first time I realized you were more afraid of silence than darkness. He'd read that line again and again, each time tracing the words with his thumb, as if he could feel her through the ink. By mid-August, he drove to the small coastal town where she was staying. He didn't tell her he was coming. He just knew he had to see her, even if it meant standing quietly at the edge of her world again. When he arrived, the air smelled of salt and honeysuckle. Children's laughter floated from a playground near the water. And there, under the shade of an old oak, was Maya. Hair swept by the wind, eyes lifted toward the horizon. She turned when she felt him there. No surprise, no shock, just a quiet, knowing smile. "You came," she said. "Of course. I told you I'd see you again." He nodded, stepping closer. "You kept your word." She studied him for a moment, her voice soft. "You always were stubborn, only about the things that matter." They stood together in silence, the waves rolling in steady rhythm. The girls ran up squealing when they saw him wrapping their arms around his waist. For a moment, everything was exactly as it should be, not perfect, but enough. And as the sun began to sink into the sea, Maya leaned against him, her voice barely above the wind. "I think," she whispered, "we finally learned how to love without losing ourselves." He smiled, resting his chin against her hair. "Then let's never forget." The tide rose higher, erasing footprints, carrying away the old ache that had lived between them for years. And somewhere between the hush of waves and the laughter of children, love quiet, fragile, real, began again. The sea had turned quieter since summer ended. The air grew cool, and the light that once danced over the water now carried the soft ache of autumn. Maya stood by the porch, her sweater sleeves pulled over her hands, watching the twins chase each other along the shoreline. The sound of their laughter mingled with the low hum of waves, a melody of ordinary happiness. Behind her, footsteps crunched against the wooden boards. She didn't need to turn to know it was Owen. He had arrived that morning, unannounced as always, yet somehow exactly when her heart expected him. "You found us," she said softly, still looking at the horizon. "I never stopped," he replied. She turned then, eyes narrowing slightly, though a smile hid in the corners. "You make it sound poetic." "It's not poetry," he said, voice low. "It's truth." For a moment silence filled the air, the kind that didn't weigh heavy anymore, only wrapped around them like a quiet understanding. He leaned on the porch rail beside her, close enough for her to feel the warmth radiating through the space between them. "You didn't tell me when you'd be back," he said after a while. "I wasn't sure," she murmured. "I wanted to see what it felt like to live without waiting for something to break." And her gaze softened. It felt peaceful. Owen nodded, accepting the honesty with a faint smile. "Then maybe we're finally learning how to keep what we build." Maya studied him for a long second. His calm, the stillness that had replaced his old restlessness. "You've changed," she said quietly. He looked at her eyes, steady. "You're the reason I wanted to." That evening, The girls insisted on lighting candles in the living room. They called it family night, a new tradition they invented on the spot. They built a small fort of blankets and fairy lights, dragged pillows to the floor, and demanded everyone stay inside. Maya rolled her eyes affectionately. "You two are impossible." "Rules are rules," Mommy Aria declared. "No one leaves the fort until story time ends." Owen raised a hand in mock surrender. "Then I guess we're trapped." Inside the soft glow of the fort, the world outside ceased to exist. He read aloud from an old picture book, his voice low and steady. Maya listened, half watching him, half losing herself in the moment, in the way the girls' heads leaned against his shoulders, in the quiet cadence of his words, in how the air between them felt like home. When the story ended, both girls had already fallen asleep, their small breaths sinking in gentle rhythm. Maya reached to take the book from his hands, whispering, "You'll spoil them. They deserve to be spoiled," he said, his voice barely a murmur. She smiled. "So do you." He looked at her, something unguarded passing through his eyes. "I already am." Later, after the girls were tucked into bed, they stepped outside again. The night air was crisp, the moonlight spilling across the waves like silver ribbons. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked. "All the time," he said. "But not like before. I used to plan every hour, every outcome. Now I just want to be here when tomorrow comes." She tilted her head, considering him. "And if tomorrow looks nothing like you expect, then I'll love it anyway." A quiet laugh escaped her. "You make it sound simple." "It's not," he admitted, "but it's worth it." Maya leaned against the railing, the wind tugging at her hair. "You're good at this now, at saying the right things." He turned toward her. "No, I'm just finally saying what I feel." Their eyes met, not with the rush of first love, but the steady recognition of something rebuilt piece by piece. "You know," she said softly, "I spent a long time waiting for you to become someone else." "I did too," he replied. "I just didn't realize I needed to find that version of myself first." She smiled, faintly. "So this is him." He took a step closer. "The one who still believes in you?" "Yes." Her breath caught. "And what do you want now, Owen?" He didn't hesitate. "To stop running from peace." They walked along the beach until the candles inside flickered out. The night folded around them, gentle and endless. Maya's hand brushed his once, then again, and finally, she didn't pull away. He laced his fingers through hers. The simplest act, yet it felt like a lifetime condensed into one touch. She looked up at him. "You're sure?" He smiled, quiet, unforced. "I'm here, aren't I?" Being here doesn't mean staying. It does when it's with you. The words hung in the air, fragile as light. She didn't answer, but her silence said enough. The ocean roared softly in the distance, and above them, the stars blinked, countless patient witnesses to a love that had finally learned to breathe again. Weeks passed gently. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic confessions, only mornings filled with laughter, dinners shared without rush, and nights when the world seemed small enough to fit inside that little home by the sea. Sometimes Maya would catch him watching her, not the way he used to, with hunger or guilt, but with quiet awe, as if she were something he couldn't believe was real. Once, when she teased him about it, he said, "I'm just memorizing the way peace looks on you." She smiled. "Then I'll try to keep it." And he'd replied softly, "You already do." There was no promise of forever spoken aloud. They both knew better than to name it. But in every small, ordinary moment, her laughter from the kitchen, his hand brushing hers over breakfast, The girl's sleepy footsteps padding down the hall forever lived quietly right there, and sometimes that was more than enough. The wind that night was restless, carrying the scent of rain before it came. Maya could feel it, that subtle pressure in the air, the heaviness that meant something was about to change. The sea, once gentle and predictable, had grown wild, its rhythm breaking unevenly against the shore. Inside the small house, everything looked deceptively peaceful. The twins were asleep, soft breaths, mingling with the distant roll of thunder. The lights were dim, the world small. But Owen could sense the same unease that sat in Maya's chest, the quiet tension that sometimes visits even the happiest homes. He stood by the window, his reflection caught between shadow and lightning. "The storm's getting stronger," he murmured. Maya joined him, her hand resting lightly on the frame. "It'll pass," she said. "They always do." Her tone was calm, but he knew her too well. There was a distance in her voice, one that had nothing to do with weather. He turned to her. "You've been somewhere else lately." She looked up surprised. "What do you mean, I mean here?" he said gently. "You're next to me, but your eyes are far away." Maya hesitated. She wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing," he said softly. "It's you trying to protect something or someone from getting hurt again." The truth in his words hit her like cold air. She exhaled slowly. "I'm just waiting for the part where everything falls apart again." He studied her face for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "And if it doesn't, then I'll still be afraid that it will." Owen nodded, understanding settling between them, like an old companion. "You don't have to pretend not to be scared, Maya. I am too." That startled her, not the words themselves, but the simplicity with which he said them. The Owen she once knew had been made of armor. This one spoke from the cracks. "What scares you?" she asked quietly. "Losing what I don't deserve," he said. She blinked, her heart tightening. "You're not that man anymore." "I know," he replied. "But sometimes late at night, I still hear his voice, the one that said, 'Success mattered more than love.' And I wonder if he'll ever completely go away." Maya reached out her hand, resting against his chest. "Maybe he doesn't have to disappear," she whispered. "Maybe you just have to live louder than his echoes." Owen's eyes softened, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "You always know how to make broken things sound beautiful." "I don't fix them," she said. "I just refuse to look away." The rain came soon after, sudden, heavy, relentless. The windows rattled, the lights flickered, and thunder cracked close enough to make the house tremble. The twins stirred, half awake, their frightened voices calling from the next room. Maya went to them, gathering them into her arms as the storm howled outside. Owen joined, sitting beside them on the edge of the bed. "Is it going to break the house?" Ava whispered. "No," Owen said gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Houses are stronger than storms, especially this one." "Why?" Arya asked, her voice trembling. "Because everyone inside it loves each other," he said simply, "and that makes it unshakable." The girls clung closer. Maya's heart softened at his words, but her eyes lingered on him, on the man who once couldn't say love, without flinching, now speaking it like a prayer. When the girls finally drifted back to sleep, Owen stayed. The storm outside had quieted to a steady rhythm, rain tapping against the glass. Maya watched him from the doorway. "You always say the right thing when it matters." He smiled faintly. "It's easier when I'm telling the truth." She walked closer, the dim light catching her profile. "You mean that about love making a house stronger?" "I do." "Then what makes it fall?" He thought for a moment, then said quietly, "Silence." That word lingered. Silence, the thing that had once broken them, the thing they'd both been afraid of since. Maya sat beside him, her shoulder brushing his. Then maybe we should promise to never let it grow again. He turned to her eyes steady. Promise. The night stretched long after that. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Outside, the storm faded, leaving behind the kind of peace that only follows chaos. Inside, the candlelight flickered across their faces, softening the edges of everything that had ever gone wrong. Owen reached for her hand. You know, he said quietly, I used to think love was supposed to feel like lightning, bright, impossible, unforgettable. And now I think it's rain. It doesn't strike, it stays. It finds its way into everything, even when you're not looking. Maya smiled faintly. That's a dangerous kind of love, the only kind worth having. For a long while, they simply listened to the soft rain, to the steady breathing of their daughters, to the unspoken rhythm of two hearts that had learned to move together again. And somewhere in that silence, something shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but like a seed finally sprouting after years underground. Maya leaned her head against his shoulder, her eyes closing. Maybe storms aren't meant to scare us, she whispered. Maybe they just remind us what's worth holding on to. Owen pressed a kiss to her hair. Then let's hold on. By morning, the world outside had changed. The sky was washed clean, pale blue, stretching endlessly above the sea. The air smelled of salt and new beginnings. The twins burst out of their room, already laughing, the fear of the night forgotten. Maya followed them with her eyes, a quiet warmth blooming in her chest. Owen caught her gaze across the room, and for a moment, neither moved. There was no need to. The storm had passed inside and out, and what remained was something stronger, steadier. Love, she realized, didn't need to prove itself with promises or passion. Sometimes it simply stayed, and in the stillness that followed, that was enough. Autumn deepened. The air turned crisp, carrying the scent of pine and the faint sweetness of fallen leaves. The little house by the sea wore the season beautifully, ivy climbing the porch in threads of gold, the wind whispering through half-opened windows. It had been nearly a year since the night of the storm, and yet sometimes Maya still woke before dawn, listening to the world as if waiting for it to ask whether this peace was real. But every morning when she turned her head and saw Owen there, still asleep, his arm loosely draped across her side, the question answered itself. He always woke before her, though. Quietly, as if afraid to break the spell of her rest. He'd slip out of bed, make coffee, and stand by the kitchen window, watching the waves roll in. To him, this was success now, not boardrooms or power, but mornings filled with laughter, warmth, and the soft sound of small feet running across the floor. That morning he found Maya outside, sitting on the porch steps, with a notebook open on her lap. The wind played with a loose strand of her hair, and sunlight touched her skin like something sacred. He leaned against the doorway, watching her in silence. You're writing again. She looked up, smiling, trying to. About what? About us, she said simply. He walked closer, sitting beside her. Then it must be a long story. It is, she said, closing the notebook softly, but maybe not the kind that needs an ending. Owen tilted his head. Every story ends, maybe, she replied, eyes on the sea. But some stories just keep breathing even after the last word. He smiled at that, a quiet, thoughtful smile, and took her hand. Then let's keep breathing. The girls came running out, moments later giggling as they waved 2 paper kites. We made them ourselves, Ava shouted. Help us fly them. Maya laughed, rising from the steps. Owen took one kite, helping Arya untangle the string. The wind caught quickly, and soon both kites lifted into the sky, swaying, dipping, rising higher, until their colors became small dots against the blue. "Don't let go," Maya called out. Arya grinned. "Even if I do, it'll come back down somewhere." Owen laughed softly, looking at Maya. "She gets that from you." "Patience, faith," he said. They stood together, hands brushing, eyes lifted to the sky, where the kites danced in the wind, fragile yet free. There was something about that moment, about watching their daughters laugh under an open sky, that made both of them understand what all the pain had been for. The breaking, the distance, the silence, all of it had led here. The wind shifted, pulling one of the kites downward. Arya gasped, but Owen caught the string just in time. "Got it," he said, steadying it again. Maya exhaled a soft laugh. "You really don't let go easily, do you?" He looked at her, the wind tugging at his shirt, the light in his eyes unshakable. Not anymore. That evening, the house smelled of soup and fresh bread. The twins were upstairs painting on old newspapers spread across the floor. Their laughter floated through the ceiling. Owen and Maya sat by the window, wine glasses untouched between them. The sunset bled across the sky, orange, melting into violet, the kind of beauty that made silence feel sacred. "You ever think about what would have happened if we hadn't found our way back?" Maya asked quietly. He nodded. "Every day. And I think I'd still be running," he said. "And I'd never know what peace felt like." She looked at him for a long moment, the light reflecting in her eyes. "Peace," she repeated softly. "That's what this is, isn't it?" "It is," he said. "But not the kind that's quiet. The kind that lives in chaos, in laughter, in second chances." She leaned back, her shoulders relaxing. "We spent so long chasing happiness. Maybe all we needed was this, an ordinary day that doesn't hurt anymore." He smiled. "Ordinary sounds perfect to me." For a while they just sat there, watching the last traces of light fade from the horizon. The sea outside had grown calm again, a mirror reflecting everything they had built. Fragile, yes, but strong enough to last. Later that night, after the girls had fallen asleep, Maya found Owen on the porch again. He was barefoot, staring at the stars, his hands tucked into his pockets. She stepped closer, her voice a whisper. "You still can't sleep." He turned, smiling faintly. "Maybe I don't want to. I don't want to miss this. He gestured around the quiet, the night, her. "You, them, us, all of it." Her breath caught warmth rising in her chest. "We almost lost it once. That's why I'll never stop remembering how it feels to have it." Now he said, "Because every time I do, it makes me want to protect it more." She moved closer until their hands found each other. For a long time, they didn't speak. There was nothing to explain anymore. The moon hung low, waves rolling softly against the shore, the sound steady like a heartbeat. And there, under the same sky, where they'd once lost and found each other, Maya finally understood what love really was. It wasn't fireworks or promises. It wasn't grand gestures or perfect words. It was this, the steady rhythm of shared silence, the safety in his hand, the laughter of children behind closed doors, the peace that came after learning to stay. Love was not what survived the storm. It was what learned to live after it. She looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. "We made it, didn't we?" He smiled, eyes soft, with everything he didn't need to say. "We did." And as she leaned into him, the night wrapped around them, not as an ending, but is everything that begins after, forever. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes love can't heal twice. Because sometimes, the quietest endings are the ones that last the longest.